kids are so pliable and so flexible that I'm finding in my experience the biggest challenge has really been more the family support that's needed, the family acceptance that there's an arc there. There's kind of an evolution of the family, and I sadly seen a lot of marriages fall apart over these issues. We try in the schools, obviously, to really focus on the child, but this is a really good example where we can't just look at the child. There is a home that they go home to every day, parents, a family they go home to, and if mom and dad are not on the same page, that can be difficult. So it's kind of a dance where we're always treading carefully, because this is, obviously there's a lot of different viewpoints on this, and there are, parental, sort of biases that are out there, cultural biases, religious biases. I mean, we just have to be mindful and respectful of all of that, meet parents where they are, but always trying to bring them back to your child is struggling and getting them to where they feel safe and they can just be open with you.
Joining me today is Paul Frisina, the Executive Director for Special Education Services and Student Support Services at Sulphur Springs Union School District in California. Thanks for joining me today, Paul.
Glad to be here.
So on our podcast today, we're going to be discussing the state of student mental health and well-being in schools, with a focus on kids that are most at risk and how you are addressing some of those unique challenges in Sulphur Springs Union. So for starters, can you tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to your current role as Executive Director of Special Education and Student Services at Sulphur Springs?
Sure, absolutely. I started in this district as a school psychologist, did that work for a number of years, and I ended up being the problem solver, the mediator, the one that was called in for the stickiest situations. This was now 25 years ago, and found myself with an opportunity to go for the director position. We were special ed at the time. It has since grown to really what we're transitioning to student support services. So right now my title is both, but it's just because our department is slowly shifting, because we cover all special education, all counseling, all health services, all behavioral services, anything related to student support, 504s, it's all under our umbrella. So really special education is our biggest branch, but certainly the mental health branch has really grown as well. It's all very critical work. So I've been doing that now I think I just completed my 25th year as the executive director.
Wow. Okay. That's great. And, one of the things, my background is, currently working at Gaggle, but I was a teacher and a behavior specialist. So, worked closely with students. A lot of it was mental health related and how we made sure that they could be productive in the classroom. So I'm excited to talk to you today. And I've got a couple different topics that we'll run through. And the first topic is really about special education leadership in kind of those vulnerable students, and how do we make sure that they're safe and thriving? So my first question is, what safety risks are most prevalent for students with disabilities, and how does your team proactively address them?
Well, there are several. I mean, I would say one of the big safety risks right now is what we call eloping or elopement behavior. This is a student leaving an area where they're supposed to be. Technically, eloping could be walking away from their desk and just wandering the room, but I'm talking about eloping like out of the class, trying to get off campus. That was something, early in my career, we would see every blue moon. Kids pretty much know when I'm at school, I'm at school. And now it's pretty common. Kids are wanting to avoid the classroom situation and can get into unsafe situations. So all of our campuses, for a number of reasons over the years, as you can imagine, with what's kind of happened in education, they're all very securely fenced in now. So kids are kept very safe, but they can't be kept from getting out. There's always push bars. You can still get off campus fairly easily. People just can't get onto campus. So we just have to have adults on alert always. If a door opens in the classroom, all eyes should go to that door and see what person's coming in or going out. And so that can cause safety issues. Obviously, there are a number of other mental health issues that we consider safety issues too.
Got it. Yeah, you made me think back to my time in a school, and we referred to it as absconding. So
Yeah,
I like eloping. It has a little bit
going
softer
AWOL.
tone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So that's great. One of the other things, and I always find when you're dealing with whether it's vulnerable populations or students with disabilities, how do you involve families in these safety efforts, really without compromising the student's autonomy? Are there things that you're doing in the district to involve families, but kind of keeping that allowing the student to kind of grow within the building and around their peers and things like that?
Well, it's an interesting question when you're looking at the elementary level, which our district is only through grade 6. So
Yeah,
as we get into those upper grades, we do have students who really want autonomy, might express, I have something I'd like to talk to somebody about. Please don't tell my mom, or they feel like they need somebody safe to speak with. But then we have real little kids that will say things or draw pictures, indicate things that we have to bring the parent into it. It really becomes case by case.
got it.
And it can get very sensitive. We just had one today. I was on the phone with one of our principals who is struggling with child who's in a divorce situation. Parents don't see eye to eye on the student's counseling needs, and the student is expressing thoughts of self-harm. And, one parent's thinking, no, he's just attention seeking. He does this all the time. The other parent is, no, I think he needs help. So we just have to do that dance and try to bring the families together. I feel like a lot of our role ends up becoming mediators with families. Let's all just think about the child and come together with what's best. And it can get tricky.
It can. Yeah, I've been the mediator at times myself, many moons ago. But you hit on another topic, and interested if you're seeing this in Sulphur Springs. But every year we do a student data report, and our data mirrors some of the data that the CDC is coming out with, and just the rise in self-harm, suicidal ideations amongst elementary age kids. And, you just touched on one. Are you seeing a rise in that? Our data doubled. It was an
Yeah,
increase of 50% for those elementary age students. Are you seeing the same thing in Sulphur Springs?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think we started to see an uptick, steady uptick, even before COVID, before the school closures. But certainly when kids returned to school after, the pandemic school closures, we really saw that start to rise. And we were already in the process of adding school social workers and trying to sort of up our game with mental health supports even before schools closed and that giant blip happened. And then we really, the board got behind it, and we really started adding social workers. We're up to 10 social workers now. And to answer your question, Todd, one of the big changes I have seen just in the last now, I would say 2 to 3 years, is we saw a steady rise in students reporting thoughts of self-harm. What started to happen is we would get, for every maybe 10 incidents like that, we might get a student that would express the thought of wanting to hurt someone else. We call those, threats of harm to others. And it was not very common. We'd get one every now and then. Then we saw those go up. They are now neck and neck. They're
Wow.
on equal footing. We have self-harm and threats to others comments, and almost always they're not imminent threats, and they're not really founded. And we do the whole threat assessment and determine that the threat is very minimal. Work with the family, child gets help, and they see somebody in school and whatnot. But every now and then they might need to be hospitalized, and we've seen those really go up just in the last few years. The actual comments that I hate you all, I wish you would die, and that's something we have to take seriously.
It is. Yeah. And we are seeing a rise in the violence to others as well. not quite as high as of last school year, but it certainly is something that's growing. But it's kind of a good segue to the next topic, which is really coordinated student support services. And you've mentioned social workers and counselors. You started as a school psychologist. And one of the things when we're talking to districts is the challenge of integrating counselors, social workers, special education professionals into one kind of cohesive support system. So how are you doing that in Sulphur Springs? Like just making sure everybody is aligned for the best needs of the students in the student population that you serve.
Well, how much time do we have? That's a huge topic. I mean, for starters, I have stayed with this district so long because we're small. And so everybody knows everybody. We work very tight together. But we've grown significantly because the needs have really, really gone up exponentially. So we'll have, students with a wide range of disabilities, that the mental health needs will present very differently. For example, a student with, intellectual disability who might really be in crisis, and might be, dealing with some really dark thoughts. Well, there's one approach with a student like that. A student who's on the autism spectrum, totally different approach. And then you might have a student who is, what we called twice exceptional, and they're extremely bright, and they think way too much, and they think themselves down rabbit holes, and there's anxiety and panic attacks, and we'll have another approach with those students. So, there's where the disability sort of interfaces with the need to provide mental health supports can really get tricky. We have special education professionals like our school psychologists, that's their background. And then you have social workers who don't come from the special ed lens. They're only looking through the mental health lens. And we got to bring those teams together a lot. You mentioned your background in behavioral. Anymore, our team of BCBAs, the board certified behavior analysts, all of our behavioral professionals, they're now starting to speak mental health. The first behaviorists we ever had in this district, you really try to keep that separate. You've got your feelings and your thoughts and your willfulness or whatever. Forget all that. We're talking about shaping behavior. She famously would say pigeons and rats, like little animals, we can shape behavior. And that's 100% true. But we've kind of realized these last several years, you cannot look away from the mental health needs and what's going on under the surface with that child. And our behaviorists right now are right there in the conversation with us, where we go look at all the factors. It's a difficult question to answer, but there's a lot that comes together to support students with all different backgrounds and certainly all different disabilities. You really have to approach it very carefully.
Yeah, and what I love is that it really sounds like you're individualizing the supports based on the student. And I think that's critical to help them, to be on the right path, because all kids are different, right? And you mentioned, 3 or 4, whether it's disabilities or in some cases they're on the other end of the spectrum where it's, hey, this person is, super smart. They have the anxiety because they're looking into it, far too deeply. And it could be something that they're studying or things like that. So no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overthinking things. Do you guys have outside service providers that are also supporting? It sounds like you've got psychologists, you've got social workers, so you've got a good network within district. Are you using any outside service providers to support some of the needs of the students?
We do. Yeah. We actually have 2 mental health agencies up here in Santa Clarita that we contract with and send referrals to.
Okay.
A great example is as we're into, April, May, coming up on the summer, and we have a student that a referral comes in, student really needs support that we don't want to provide a few weeks and then abandon them for the summer. So we refer to a local mental health agency that continuity of care will go all the way through the summer. Those agencies will sometimes come to the schools to make life easier for parents and see students on campus. Other times, the parents prefer to take them themselves. It might be a family component and the family's involved. We also have Hazel Health, which is a virtual platform that is both in our schools, and parents can refer, and the student could be seen like on an iPad at home. And that's become another sort of branch of our mental health services. So in addition to the people at our schools, we've got, like as we mentioned, school psychologists, social workers. We also contract with a provider for school-based counseling on our campuses with, licensed and pre-licensed therapists. And then we have these outside agencies that we refer to. So we kind of look at our social workers tend to be what I often refer to as the quarterback. They've got the referral in their hand. They kind of decide where this one needs to go. Sometimes they'll decide this particular case needs a lot of case management. My social worker brain is spinning. I better keep this referral myself, and they'll take that kiddo and start seeing them themselves. Other times they refer to another agency. And so we've got kind of a menu now because the needs are so great. Yeah. We really want to have just as much diversity as we can with the types of services we can provide.
Absolutely. And it sounds like there's a good, some of those outside providers have almost become an extension of Sulphur Springs. And, so maybe talk a little bit about the communication when a student is referred outside. How are the social workers and potentially psychologists brought up to speed with, things that are going on with the outside provider? Is there some sort of like communication protocol that you've developed there?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. That's a critical piece we found. If the quarterback does decide to kind of throw the ball to a local agency, it's still our student, and we still have a vested interest in how they're doing. So we'll have the teacher keep an eye on the child. The social worker, when they're on campus, will check in with the teacher. It may be in some cases that the students started with them for like a session or two, and then they referred out. So they now have a relationship. So they'll check in with the student periodically and just make sure that we are on the right track. In some cases, we might have maybe it's not working out, and that we wouldn't know if we don't follow the case closely. So, we'll check in with the parent, and the parent says, we stopped seeing the therapist because it just didn't seem to fit our needs. Well, let us help you. Let's get you linked with another provider. So it's really important to continue to follow the cases, even though there's, to use the analogy again, there's so many balls being thrown around. You really do have to manage a lot, and social workers carry a lot of the kids themselves. But our mantra is like, you still follow the ones that we send elsewhere because those are our kids. We want to keep a close eye on if it's working and if they need other supports.
Yeah, I love that. Just hearing that, even though some of them are going to outside agencies, it's really an extension of the work that you're doing, and those students are continuing to be checked on to make sure that the services are meeting their needs. So love hearing that.
Yeah.
The last one kind of under this topic is really about, is there something that you're doing in Sulphur Springs that's helping you identify, almost take a proactive approach and helping you identify some of these students that could potentially be at risk and maybe needing some additional supports?
Well, I probably the biggest factor has been education for our staff. It's really become a very just out in the open conversation that, mental health is like all other health. We're very interested when a student is, God forbid, needs chemotherapy, is out for several weeks, comes back with a bunch of accommodations. That's something everybody's very tuned into and gets what that conversation is supposed to look like. But when it's mental health, that people can be squeamish. It's personal. I shouldn't invade. That's your privacy. It's become very commonplace now just to talk about. I think that student is struggling with some issues. Let's support them. Just like we would if they had a broken leg and they had to come back to school in a wheelchair. How can we support this student? So that's the first piece, just getting it on everybody's radar that this is something that it is something that we do. I would say in, the 30 or so years I've been doing this, it used to be we're all about education. And if there is something in the social emotional realm, like making friends, feeling good about yourself, we do some of that, but really we're about education. So let's make sure we have good relationships with outside agencies that can take that on. Now, it's all on schools. You really do have to address the needs of the whole child, the physical, the emotional, absolutely the academic. But the academics are not even touchable until the child's really feeling good and present. So it's
Yeah.
almost like, in attending school. We had a lot of that after COVID, certainly, where kids just like didn't come to school as often. So like, what was that about? We have social workers doing home visits and really drilling down on that so we can get them back to school where we offer stability and structure and ultimately what they do need. It's the best medicine for most kids, consistency and structure. But just, it's kind of become a really common conversation now, mental health. Our teachers, gen ed specialists, everybody sort of knows what that conversation looks like. I think that's probably the biggest evolution I've seen in the schools. To your question, to really have the feelers out. What are the kids that need supports? Question one is, what does it look like if a kid needs supports? And that's a conversation we spent several years just kind of getting out there and going over with staff.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, students aren't feeling safe and mentally well. It's almost impossible for them to thrive academically. And what I always like to say is reach their full academic and career potential, right? And you're K to 6, right? And I always said when I was in the classroom, my job was to get them to the next step. And so, for your teachers and counselors that are working with 6th graders, get them to grade 7, right? And get them there in a way that's going to help them thrive and continue down their education and career path. So I love to hear some of the things that you're doing, really focusing in on, and you mentioned it, the whole child, right? And I think that's what's necessary today. Awesome.
Yeah.
So we're going to shift topics a little bit here and talk about your LGBTQ plus students. Obviously it's a vulnerable population. All the statistics show that, a number of students in this population need mental health supports. And so I guess my first question is, what challenges have you seen in Sulphur Springs, really with students in, kind of young grades, K to 6, with, kind of your LGBTQ plus students, and kind of what do you see them facing in the school setting?
Well, I mean, the good news is kids are so pliable and so flexible that I'm finding, in my experience, the biggest challenge has really been more the family support that's needed, the family, acceptance. That there's an arc there. There's kind of an evolution of the family. And I sadly seen a lot of marriages fall apart over these issues. We try in the schools, obviously, to really focus on the child, but this is a really good example where we can't just look at the child. There is a home that they go home to every day, parents, a family they go home to. And if mom and dad are not on the same page, that can be difficult. So it's kind of a dance where we're always treading carefully, because this is, obviously there's a lot of different viewpoints on this, and there are, parental, sort of biases that are out there, cultural biases, religious biases. I mean, we just have to be mindful and respectful of all of that, meet parents where they are, but always trying to bring them back to, your child is struggling. And getting them to where they feel safe and they can just be open with you. So if for example, one of the parents is just really, I don't want to keep talking about this, he needs to just suck it up and stop saying these things and wearing those things, or, whatever. We try to be very respectful and not correct the parent, but just help them to understand that your child is communicating something to you. And so, help us help them. And I would say, that's the short answer. Obviously, that's another very long conversation, but I'll work with our principals, our social workers, our psychologists, very, very slowly, carefully approaching the family. And in time, we've seen a lot of families. I mean, I think with almost no exceptions, right? Moms and dads just want the best for their kids.
Yeah.
And if we get a situation where mom and dad also want to be right, and if they have opposing views and they both need to be right, then we have that little dynamic to deal with. But usually we can help both parents feel right. You both want what's best for your child. You're both right to feel that way. And usually we can find some ground. I have had cases where one parent just drops out of the conversation completely. And now we're left with the one parent who is supportive and really just does want to get their child the care that they need. And we just kind of take it slowly. I've also had the one parent that sort of disappeared come back to me personally. Can I just talk to you? I don't want to have mom in the picture, or I don't want to have dad in the picture. Can I just talk to you? And sometimes we just work through it that way. It's a complicated situation. Every case is completely different. But we've got a lot of support from our staff all the way up to our superintendent to make sure those kids do feel safe at school and seen and accepted, and whatever that looks like, we're just kind of here to support the kids.
Yeah, actually, you answered one of my next questions, which was about handling situations where families may not support the student's LGBTQ plus identity. So I think you answered that, and I think, look, it's delicate, right? And you're right. Yeah. Your job is to educate the kid, but it's also supporting the family, and those dynamics, can be tough sometimes. So sounds like you guys are addressing those challenges the best way that you can. But you did bring something else up around staff. And is there specific training that you're doing for staff to kind of affirm diverse identities and addressing some of the complex support needs, whether it's LGBTQ plus or others? Are there specific trainings that the staff goes through?
Well, I mean, in the disability realm, we do trainings with administrators and our teachers. At the site level, I remember as a school psychologist presenting to staff meetings, and our psychologists will sometimes do that just to kind of make sure everybody understands the range of disabilities and needs. And we're trying to be more inclusive. So these kids are in general education classes. So of course, it really, really serves the kids well, both non-disabled and disabled kids, to have everybody understanding and being on the same page. And then same thing, with the mental health needs and LGBTQ sort of issues. In that realm, when it comes, specifically, to, for example, there's a whole presentation we do with our admins and our staff on just understanding and supporting the needs of students who are expressing gender diverse, transgender views, and just, gender nonconformity, whatever you want to call it. We start to see it even at the elementary ages, and just, what to look for and how to support those students, how to support those families. That is a training that we've done and have done quite a bit. I will say, elephant in the room, it's tricky right now. There's just, and I think just in the world right now, people are a little less open to talking about that, and families are, not sure they can ask for support in that area, not sure what's okay to say anymore. And so we try to meet them where they are. And frankly, myself, I meet staff where they are.
Yeah.
And I would say it's probably, even though I felt like the acceptance and understanding arc was sort of trending in a really great, healthy way, things have sort of gone askew a little bit, where people are feeling safe saying not so kind things. And we just have to remember, people are people. The pendulum swings, and ultimately we got to take care of kids and just be there to support them.
100%. Yeah. And we're kind of seeing that across the board in our work with districts as well. As, I agree with you. We were trending the right way, and now it's almost been paused. And to your point, people are just more comfortable saying, inappropriate things. And so that causes anxiety. That causes, in some cases, the student to need more mental health supports. But you again, you hit the nail on the head. It's, how do we help the student and then potentially the family, if possible. So excellent. I'm going to move on to a different topic here, and it's really around crisis response and threat assessment in special education. And so, does your special education team participate in threat assessments and crisis planning as it relates to the district?
They do. When you say special education team, I guess that depends, because it's such a diverse group. We've got occupational therapists, right? Speech pathologists, school psychologists are very involved in that conversation. But when students who have an IEP actually have an identified disability and are getting services, express thoughts of self-harm or harming others, those folks that support them or are part of their IEP are often in that conversation. So to that extent, they're very involved. But it just adds a layer of complexity for sure when the student has a disability.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that is because it led me to my next question, which is really training staff and having worked with students with disabilities, really trying to understand, is it a disability related behavior or is this an actual threat? And so
Yeah.
I'd love to hear how maybe you're addressing that. Obviously, it's probably individualized based on knowing the student, but I know that there have been times where it was definitely disability related and probably
Yeah.
something that could have, been dealt with the student, and it ended up being a threat where, potentially things are shut down. So have you experienced any of that in Sulphur Springs?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, we're currently in the throes of working through a new layer of our protocol for threat assessments. When a student says, they express his thoughts of hurting others, there's a protocol that we follow, and it's research based and it's very common. A lot of school districts use it. You go through the questions. Two different people would individually interview the student and see if they get different outcomes. It's a whole process. But when it's a student who has a disability, has known, for example, very identified and known behavioral profile, let's say, that is very attention seeking, for example, and says things like that, things like, I wish you would all die every time they get frustrated in class. And it happens 2-3 times a week. We started really looking at developing a new protocol for those students. We don't want two different people dropping whatever they're doing and going through a whole assessment with the student who that's feeding their attention-seeking behavior. But we also can't just say, oh, that's just little Timmy. Ignore him. He does
Right.
that a lot. No, we have to take it seriously. So we're actually literally right now was with our social workers yesterday talking about this, was with our psychologists a couple of weeks ago talking about this, developing like a kind of a branch off of our current protocol that would be something we might call frequent reporters.
Mhm.
Students who, we define empirically, sort of carefully with data. Oh, this is a frequent reporter. Let's take a different protocol with him. And it could be related to the disability. It could be related to their, behavioral profile, but just being really careful to take it seriously. But it may be in some cases, let's not make it worse by feeding that need for attention.
Right.
Let's take a different approach. And a great example is school psychologist hears a student say something that they have now said 12 times in the last 12 days. They might just be in a calm moment when the student has calmed down, isn't so frustrated with that math worksheet, and they're walking back to class just saying, that thing you said back there, like, what do you mean by that? And just very casually seeing what comes out of the child, as
Yeah.
opposed to a very intensive interview with one person and then going through the same thing with another person. So it's kind of shifted our practices in, exactly to your question, looking at, let's look broader. Is there a disability? Is there a behavioral issue, maybe a mental health issue that is warranting a slightly different approach?
Got it. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Do you involve the families at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do, for any risk or threat assessment, the family is always brought into it. Obviously, unless part of what the student expresses is, something about, suspected child abuse or whatever.
Right.
But for the most part, we always bring the parents in. And if it's a child who that's a critical piece of this alternative sort of protocol we're looking at now for our frequent reporters, is getting the parents' agreement that it is a frequent reporter. For example, if the child has a behaviorist who says, a known function of this child's behavior is attention. They are definitely attention seeking. And the parent agrees, oh yes, absolutely attention is what he's working on, what he's working for. We'd want to get the parent to be on the same page with us before we go considering them a frequent reporter and taking a different approach if they do make a threat. So yeah, the family's got to be involved in that conversation for sure.
Great. All right. So we're up to our last question. And
Okay.
so if you were king for a day, unlimited resources, what type of things would you implement or add to the great work that you're already doing in Sulphur Springs?
Wow. That's another how much time do you have kind of
Yeah.
question. That's
Unlimited budget.
ooh, yeah, unlimited budget. That's
Yeah.
gonna get
Rare,
lightheaded
right?
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't even fathom. I mean,
I know.
you spend your life in special ed where we're always underfunded. I mean the needs, just looking at the mental health needs have always outpaced our resources.
Yeah.
And if I could go back in time, I mean, when I started in this district and we had, I don't know, I think 1,000 less kids, we had 2 less schools. I had maybe a couple dozen people that reported to me, and now we're well over 100. Like we just grow and grow and grow. And if I could have known that back in the 90s, I would have said, oh, we're going to be rich someday. We're going to be set. We're going to be so well staffed, but the needs just continue to outpace. So it would be staff, qualified, really exceptional staff that are in it for the right reasons, and plenty of them to meet the needs of the students. That would be my ultimate fantasy, because we can't do without the staff. And obviously that comes with a lot of financial strings. So unlimited resources, yeah, we'd be paying educators and all the support staff probably triple what they're getting now.
Yeah.
Because they really are doing the work that's going to shape the next generation.
They are. And yeah, that's a common response to that question is more people, right? And the mental health, the need for mental health supports is not going away. To your point, it's going to grow, right? And not just grow, but the need to individualize, which we talked about a little bit earlier as well. And so I wish I could make that happen for you.
It gets bigger and it grows in complexity.
Yes.
That's the game. It really gets trickier and trickier.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys qualify or using any of the CYBHI funding through the state of California? Are you guys using any of that?
We aren't yet. That's okay. Something that we're starting to explore. When it first got released as an option, we decided, it's way too huge to manage as a small district. We'd have to kind of create a whole separate division. But it has, and let's see how districts do once they implement it. Let's see how it goes. And I've been observing other districts, and it's going fairly well. So we're starting to play with moving forward in that direction, because I think that would also expand our options.
Yeah, it might add some additional resources for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Paul, thank you so much. You guys are doing great work in Sulphur Springs. I really appreciate the time that you took today. And I look forward to, other educators, other folks that could potentially be struggling with some of these challenges, listening to this and maybe getting some ideas from you. So thank you very much. And really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate it, Todd. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you found this conversation valuable, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps others discover the show and supports our mission. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Leaders Saving Lives.